Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 electoral map. So on your screen, this can all be found at yet another political map simulator, yapms.com, and then if you just go over to the homepage, you should be able to find the 2024 map, and I will put the link to this in the comment section. I'll probably pin it at the top. But today's video is just going to be briefly covering the 2024 electoral map and electoral shifts and where each individual state is gaining electoral votes. I covered this back in 2019 about around the end, so probably mid to late December. And the maps do sometimes change. There are a number of projections from a number of different, if they are census projections, they pretty much just give us a general idea of where the population shift in the country is going, because the country still has 538 electoral votes. It's not going to change. It just depends on how it's allocated per individual state. So, states like Texas have increased in electoral votes compared to other states like Ohio, which has lost one. And there are very clear trends as to where the influx of the population is going. And all of it benefits the Democratic Party. And here's why. Well, first things first, if you look at the areas that Donald Trump won in 2016, he does get a little bit more of an electoral vote share. So let's go ahead and characterize all of the states. But in 2024, the battleground states that were not as competitive, but were still competitive in this election, meaning they were still expected to go to Trump, but, still went to, let's see, 1 second. I think it's 309 if I fill in main second district, that were expected to go to Trump, that were not necessarily super competitive, but still within the reach per se for the Democratic Party. We're definitely going to see a lot more of those become way more competitive in future elections. So this is the 2016 map. Donald Trump does increase by 3 electoral votes. And then the Democrats get 229, if I fill in DC correctly, which means that based off the 2024 shifts, it looks like it benefits the Republican Party. But that is a very unfortunate reality for the GOP. Past 2024 and 2028, the minority representation in the electorate is going to continuously increase. And considering the fact that the Republican voting base is mainly white voters, means that that's going to push a lot of the Republican voters out of, at least a bunch of the Republican senators and representatives and presidents out of office. When you look at the areas that are gaining electoral votes, they're also gaining a very, very, very large minority presence. For example, Texas and Arizona and Colorado. All 3 of these states have gained electoral votes based off the 2024 projection, which means that they will, number one, have more electoral weight, and they are all becoming rapidly more Democratic. 8 years ago, all 3 of those states were either in play or solid for the Republican Party. Now they're competitive. Colorado's more so likely Democrat, Arizona's more so lean Democrat, and Texas is competitive. Now, as we move ahead to 2024 and possibly 2028, then states start becoming either, Texas we could likely see become a lean Democratic state by the end of the 2020s. And obviously that would be an electoral college end to the Republican Party. Forget the Rust Belt. As soon as Texas flips, you give that one to the Democratic Party, they win the election. This is the same for the 2016 map as well. So when the Republican Party is not necessarily winning over minority voters, that will essentially be the death of the Republican Party. You see, political parties do survive. There will still be a Republican Party. But looking at this map, America has never seen this type of minority representation that we're going to see within the next couple of decades. They have never seen as big of an influx of immigrant voters that are not white. And, Democrats consistently win over that voting base. With the exception of a few small precincts in Florida, generally Democrats win amongst every single demographic. And when there's a huge influx of Hispanic voters coming into Texas and Arizona and Colorado, whether or not they're moving from the United States or out of the country and immigrating legally, I mention that because illegal people don't vote. But when you look at the overall electoral map, it just benefits them. If Arizona goes to the Democrats in 2020, then that'll make that 100% competitive for the Democratic Party, if not in their column in 2024. What if the Democrats win the Rust Belt? Well, again, when you look over here, the Rust Belt has lost electoral votes, so its weight isn't as heavy. The weight shifts generally over to the California area. Oregon gains an electoral vote. That's a solid Democratic state. Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania all lose one. Ohio loses one. So these are states that Donald Trump carried in 2016, disregarding the state of Minnesota. And even if he does carry them, I mean, the Democrats have pathways to victory outside of those states. In states that are also becoming more Democratic, this area I would agree with you that they are shifting a little bit more to the right. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be safe Republican within the next 4 to 8 years, but I do think that the Republican Party will have a much better chance considering that a number of minority voters are moving down to the South or moving to the Sun Belt. So when you take those voters out of consideration, when the Republican Party wins amongst white voters, they generally win those states. So let's say those states do go to the GOP. Looking at North Carolina, this is gaining 1 electoral vote. Florida gains 2. With the new million added to the voter rolls after the 2018, I think it was a law passed by the citizens that allowed convicted felons to vote. That added around 1 million people to the voter rolls. I believe in Florida it was around 1 million. I just remember seeing an article about it. But North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina even, which is interesting, and Florida are all going to become a lot better for Democrats. When you look at the areas that are losing electoral votes, while it may seem as if the Republican Party gained in Florida and gained in Texas, I don't know why I flipped those, and gained in North Carolina, you have to realize that the Democratic Party has a much better shot at those states in the future. Those states are all increasing in minority turnout and minority representation in the electorate. 2018 was a big warning sign for North Carolina Republicans. The Democrats came very, very close to winning the popular vote in the House of Representatives, and they would have if they just fielded a candidate for the North Carolina 3rd District. They 100% would have won the popular vote in North Carolina. But gerrymandering sent 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats to the House, and that's what caused a number of issues and turmoil. But the Democratic Party will have a lot better of a chance in North Carolina as we proceed through future elections, and Florida and Texas. Now, this is not an electoral map that I think will happen. Generally, I think the Rust Belt will vote with the rest of the country, and as will both of these states. But you also have to take a look at the minority demographics and how they're increasing very rapidly, and how a number of suburban voters that used to be Republican voters are now voting for Democrats. Take Northern Virginia, for example. Take Arizona, for example. Take even parts of Texas, for example. There are areas that have led Democrats to victory in the midterm elections and will likely lead Democrats to victory in future elections. Whenever there's a type of minority influx, that means the Democratic Party has a much better chance. That's just based off the facts. The Democratic Party consistently wins amongst minority voters, whereas the Republican Party consistently wins amongst white voters. And as the white electorate dwindles, and considering the fact that a number of white voters are Democrats, compared to Donald Trump winning around 8% of the black vote in 2016, there's a clear difference. When the Democrats are winning 45% of the white vote in their wave years, or for Obama elections, I think he won 39% in 2012. And then the Republican Party is only getting around 7 to 8% of the minority electorate. Well, you can start to see how it really doesn't matter, especially with an increased, with the states that are increasing in electoral vote counts. It's all going to benefit the Democrats. Just because there's an increase from the 2016 numbers to 2024, it really doesn't mean much, to be completely honest, because of the fact that the states that went to Donald Trump are more likely than not going to go to the Republican Party in the next 10 to 20 years. Those states will become competitive. Now, obviously, that's with maybe extreme demographic shifts and extreme party movement in all of these states, but it definitely goes to show the Democratic Party does not need the Rust Belt at this point. They practically could win with just the Sun Belt. Even in this scenario, where every state stays the same except for Texas and Arizona, Democrats win. Even if the Republican Party somehow gets Arizona, which is a lot more likely to go to the Democrats than Texas, Texas deals the final blow to the GOP. This is exactly why there's a number of advocates against possibly even legal immigration. I've seen a number of politicians campaign for that. I don't think any of them won their primaries. I know that they are pretty notable because people completely attack them on a daily basis. And I've seen a number of comments on this YouTube channel in particular discussing how the reason why Texas, or not just particularly Texas, but the United States should close off complete legal immigration because it's rapidly changing the electorate. And, I'm not going to take a stance on something like that, but it definitely isn't good to shut out a voting bloc just because they don't necessarily live here yet. Obviously, people immigrate here, and there are plenty of people that come here that are amazing people that weren't born here. And I definitely think they all should have a right to vote. Obviously, you have to go through the legalization process and citizenship process, but I don't necessarily think that people should be advocating for a complete cutoff of legal immigration. But pretty much the electoral trends 100% benefit the Democrats. Realistically, the Republican Party, as I mentioned 2 years ago, is running out of voters. Unless they rapidly change their platform, they won't be able to win over soon to be the majority or very very large minority of the electorate. And considering the fact the Democrats are already ramping up efforts to get out the minority vote, definitely isn't going to be good news for them in the 2020 election. Now, whether or not this mail-in ballot thing, if it does happen because of the coronavirus, does negatively impact the turnout amongst Democrats or Republicans is still yet to be seen. But I do think that the Democratic Party is doing very well in terms of turnout efforts, and it's going to do very well for them in future elections. And the GOP does need to change something within their platform. In order to win over these voters in Arizona, in Colorado, in Nevada, in Texas, you can't rely on just the white vote anymore, because within the next 10 to 20 years, white voters will become the minority in America, and minority voters will be the majority. And the same thing goes for North Carolina, for Georgia, for Florida. The reason why these states are losing electoral votes isn't just because people are going to the South, but there are a number of people who are moving out of Philadelphia, moving out of Detroit, moving out of Milwaukee, out of Minneapolis. And generally, those are minority voters that are moving to the South, or possibly to the Sun Belt, or moving to areas that are gaining electoral votes. I think it's interesting that Montana is gaining a district. I definitely think the Democrats will be able to win one district in Montana, as shown in the past, but I think they're just going to try to split it right down the middle as they did before. I'm just looking at some other things real quick, because I'm not necessarily... Alabama lost an electoral vote. West Virginia lost one. Ohio lost one. Maine, let's see. New York always loses some. Let's see over here. Rhode Island, I think, was supposed to lose one. Yeah, so they lost one. No real changes here. Looking over Virginia, North Carolina gained one, but I mentioned that. I don't think there's too much changing on this map. California did not increase or decrease. There were some models that projected California was supposed to decrease 1 or possibly even 2 seats. Doesn't look like it's going to be happening based off this map, but expect a number of shifts in the electoral map numbers. Maybe your state will have different voting power in the electoral college. So make sure you fill out your census form and everything, because you want your state to have complete representation. And obviously you personally won't take a direct impact on this overall electoral shift, but you definitely should fill out your census and do everything you can to get your state representation. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all tomorrow.